Hey, it's James Murray in the NetNewsLedger newsroom. We're joined today by the leader of Canada's New Democratic Party, Tom Mulcair. Welcome to Thunder Bay and welcome to NetNewsLedger.
Thanks so much for the invitation. I've been looking forward. I hear that the NetNewsLedger is watched and followed all over the north, so it's a thrill to be here.
We get a lot of people from across the region, and that's why we wanted to get you in and talk about
I'm
some
thrilled
of
to
the
be here
issues.
with you.
You're on the tour right now,
Yep.
going across the country. It's sort of the pre-election tour, even though the election date's really
Pretty well
set.
known, yeah.
What's your view across the country? What are people telling you?
As my wife Catherine and I travel from coast to coast to coast, the number one thing we hear is that Canadians are ready for change in Ottawa. They don't like the way things have been going here at home in Canada, and they don't like our reputation around the world. So some of the issues that we hear a lot about are jobs, well-paid jobs in the manufacturing sector are leaving by the hundreds of thousands, and they're being replaced with part-time, precarious, low-paid work. That's a big issue for a lot of Canadians. There's never been a time when we've lost 400,000 jobs like that, and even though the Conservatives boast about new jobs, well, there's still 200,000 more unemployed today than there were when the crisis hit in 08. So there's a lot that can be done to make the country a better place.
On manufacturing jobs.
Yes.
What should we be doing here in northwestern Ontario?
Well, there are some things that the government can do if they actually believe in playing a positive role. You see, the problem with Mr. Harper's Conservatives is they take this ideological vision that government has nothing whatsoever to do with the marketplace. But that's not true. Governments intervene all the time, and they don't have to intervene to run businesses. They can certainly intervene to make it easier to run a business and to create jobs. Let me give you a few examples. We have right now in Canada a tax rate of 11% for small, medium-sized businesses. Well, we're planning to lower that to 9 right away. When we're going to get to that right away when we form government.
So the New Democrats want to lower taxes.
For the small and medium-sized
business,
businesses,
okay.
because they're the job creators. You see, James, they create 80% of the new jobs in this country. Mr. Harper's approach, and he's backed in that by Justin Trudeau, he's been giving $50 billion in tax reductions to Canada's richest corporations. We disagree with that. We'll make sure that, like every other Canadian, large corporations start paying their fair share because now their taxes have been dropped to a level that's just far too low. So that's a positive example. There's also something that we're proposing is to bring back some of the innovation tax credits that Mr. Harper got rid of. That will help. Any manufacturing company has to spend money for specialized computer programs and the like to make themselves more efficient. Right now there's no tax credit for that. We'd bring one back. And beyond that, there's an accelerated capital cost allowance. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it disappears. We'd bring that back full time.
Okay. Now, one of the issues that's been discussed heavily, the Northwest Superior Planning Board and Unifor in Dryden are talking about the number of retirees in the trades. How do we bring more young people into the trades?
Well, one of the things that we can do is do like countries that are smart about this, like Germany have done. You bring together labor, management, education, you look at the needs, and you make the training fit the needs. We don't do that in Canada. We don't know how to get everybody around the same table. And that's something that we would propose to change. With the incredible team of candidates that we got, we already know John Rafferty, of course, who is our Member of Parliament here in Rainy River, but then in Superior North, we're running a very experienced person, very respected, Andrew Folds, and who doesn't know in Kenora, Howard Hampton, who's going to be running for us up there. So that's the great team of candidates we've got to bring forward a very positive, optimistic message about what we can do differently from the Conservatives.
Okay. Now, one of our audiences on NetNewsLedger is we reach across the north. What do we do for First Nation issues? And primarily in a lot of cases, that's a social issue across Canada. It's not just Northern Ontario.
Well, not only would we have very strong, experienced people on First Nations issues like Howard and John, to give you those two examples, but we also already have two First Nations members in our caucus. Romeo Saganash, a very respected Cree negotiator from northern Quebec, and a young Innu lawyer from the lower North Shore. His writing's called Manicouagan. His name is Jonathan Genet-Jourdain. So that's a way for us to show that openness and understanding, because we don't just listen as we go across the country. We have people in our caucus. For example, Romeo has made sure with a bill that everything our government would do would respect Canada's international obligations. So that sort of filter will be put on our cabinet. Every decision we would take would respect treaty rights, inherent rights, and Canada's international obligations for First People. And I'm proud to tell you, James, that there's no issue on which I've held more meetings than the issues involving First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in Canada. Catherine, my wife, and I did a cross-Canada tour in the summer of 2013, and it culminated with a big reception at Stornoway, the official residence in Ottawa, for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis leaders, because it was commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which, it should be borne in mind, didn't speak about tribes or bands, it spoke about nations. So that's the number one priority for the NDP, is to create a respectful nation-to-nation approach.
Murdered and missing Indigenous women, what would happen?
We would, within the first 100 days, we would start a Royal Commission of Inquiry. We would consult during those 100 days on the terms of that Royal Commission, because we're not going to dictate from the top down. That's always been Mr. Harper's mistake. On education, for example, he thought he could dictate the terms. You know, we've apologized for the residential schools tragedy, which was one of the high points of my political career, to have been there that day. And I honestly think Mr. Harper got that right. But then you have to remember why you apologized.
Well, a lot of the background that very few people know is how much influence the former leader of the New Democrats, Jack Layton, had in making that apology happen.
The back story to that is going to be told one day. But Jack fought very hard to help Mr. Harper, because there was a lot of resistance from the Liberals that day who were trying to make political hay out of it. And Jack rose above the whole thing with Mr. Harper to make sure that that apology was done correctly, and I'm very proud of that.
That was a good moment for Canada.
It was.
Now we have to finish. You know,
Exactly.
We got to first base, let's get to second, third.
And I had Justice Murray Sinclair over to Stornoway a few days before he released his report, and, you know, lots of recommendations in there, what we can be doing differently, and that's all tied in with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But don't forget, going back to the Erasmus Dussault report, we already have lots of pathways to solutions. So that's why I'm talking very openly about it with Canadians, letting them know that this is a historical situation that we've gotten wrong in the past, but the NDP is resolved to start getting right for the future.
So heading into the fall and into the what will be eventually the official campaign, what do you see happening with the New Democrats? What's the approach going to be for the campaign?
Well, I think that Canadians are looking forward to replacing the politics of fear and division with the politics of hope and optimism. Having concrete ideas on the table that will be helpful to middle-class families, like quality $15 a day childcare, bringing in a federal minimum wage. We don't even have one right now, of $15 an hour. Rolling the retirement age back to from 67 to 65. I don't know about you, but I don't remember Stephen Harper telling anybody in 2011 that he was going to raise the retirement age. He had no mandate for that. So those are the types of things that can help the middle class that's working harder than ever before, but following further and further behind. Household debt is at an all-time high. So we've got to start taking a different approach. We believe in a positive role for the government in helping make things better, and we'll work together with people across the country to make that happen.
Thank you very much for your time.
Great to see you, James. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm James in the NetNewsLedger newsroom with the leader of Canada's official opposition, Tom Mulcair. And we're good.